So I'm back. It was just a quick question. So that's where we're kind of at. So we're looking at each area. So the VAs we're looking at. And like I said, as far as not taking away from my own family, what that means is like we could easily take this company for what it is and then scale it way, way back, right? We don't need to have our own material. We don't need to really have our own warehouse. We don't need to have all these employees running around. And the sales trainer can get rid of him. There's a lot of things that we can take away. And what it equates to is a lot of friggin' money. Like if I look at everything as far as cutting all that stuff back, then cutting advertising back and everything else, I could be looking at saving myself, 10, I don't know, maybe about $20,000 a month, right? So why am I going to continue to spend this money if there's not really a big return of investment? Because I got to keep on moving. Sorry. So we have it where I'm making multiple six figures, but like, why am I putting out all this money if I don't need to, right? So that's what we're looking at. Going through the next like the other thing, like so, basically, if you're a smaller company, like it really depends on what you need to do. Like as a bigger, we're not a big company by any means, but like we hit $2 million in sales last year. We have 7 employees at this point, so we're at a different position than someone that is just, some guy with a helper, just starting out in his own pickup truck. So it's different, right? So we have to start looking at the business models. It's just a completely different situation. So if you're doing everything on your own, chances are, like when you're first starting out, there's really not much that you can cut back. Like that's going to be a significant change. So for me, by the things I can cut back, I'm going to save myself like $20,000 a month. But for someone that's just starting out in a pickup truck and stuff like that, like what are you going to cut back, right? And so for you, it might be the opposite. This might be the time now that you need to go more on the offensive and start taking, calculated risks. As far as like maybe do a little advertising. A lot of people they don't spend the time with the reaching out to other companies that may be able to refer them business. Like we're guilty of that as well. That's something that we never did that I should have done. And I didn't realize how important it was until I started, like my one sub, actually two of the subs. So the one we don't really use as much anymore. But the other one, he gets all his business. It's all referrals, word of mouth, stuff like that. And a lot of it's because of the connections he's made with other businesses. And also for his type of business, it just lends itself to a lot of referrals. Because like when you're doing fencing, you're doing decks, you irrigation, he was doing pavers, concrete, like you name it. So like one customer can lead into like 4 and 5 different types of jobs, whereas we don't really have that. Like we're kind of like one and done, right? So if I was gonna, I think now, like one of the most underutilized if you're just starting out is like Craigslist, right? So I've talked about it in past videos. We don't use it anymore, but that's one of the main sources of income when I first started out. And before it used to be free, so then you had to post like 3 times a day. Now it's like $5 per post, and which is a good thing because most people don't use it now because it's $5, which is ridiculous. So that's something if you need to get some kind of word of mouth, advertising, something like that. Craigslist is a really good place to start. You can do Facebook Marketplace, but honestly, like nah, I never was a fan of Facebook. Craigslist was actually better. You think it's a lot of cheap people, but like I had some decent business and some pretty large jobs because of it. And there's been a few times years past that it saved my ass in the wintertime, which I've talked about before. But like there's been times where in January, February, what was it, like 3 years ago in like January, there was snow on the ground. We had 2 jobs booked in. It was like $5 or $6,000 in profit. They were both like 300-400 foot jobs. So that's something you can look at as well. But I think when you're smaller, like cutting back doesn't really help as much. You're kind of hurting yourselves. But for someone that's like myself that spent a lot of money that probably shouldn't have, in the hope that, or I shouldn't say hope, the effort of trying to grow the business, which it didn't happen. Not that we're not doing, we're quite a bit higher this year in profit, but it's just not enough to the point where like all the additional, risk that I kind of took on for that. So that's where we're kind of at. For one person that's on here, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm trying to think what else. where I'm kind of at for today's video. Just plans for a recession, looking at different things. The other thing to look at though is, as far as the offensive for everyone, is remember that once the shit hits the fan, um, you know, the stocks are going to drop drastically, drastically, drastically. The one that I used to follow all the time, and I always buy in the recession, it was called Brown Shoe. It was BWS, but now it's under Solaris. I forget the ticker symbol, but it's look up Solaris. It's a group of the only reason I know it was because of Famous Footwear, where I used to work. And so what would happen, and I would see it was like clockwork every single time. Every time there was a recession or something else that happened, like COVID, whatever, it did the same thing. Trades at like the mid to high 20s, and then it will drop to like $3. Check it out, right? Every single time. And then within a year, it goes back up. So this is a stock to look at. It's retail based, so like when the recession's hit and everything else, retail gets hit exceptionally hard. And I'm not some stock guy, but this is something I've seen every single time with this. And so they get hit really hard. But the nice part with this is they own several brands. So they own like I forget the brands at this point, but it's like 4 different brands at this point. It might even be more because I haven't researched them as much. But what ends up happening is it's going to drastically go down. So this would be a perfect time, save some money, even if it's 5 grand. The 5 grand, if you're just starting out, will turn into like $30,000 within a few months. Like it just happens every single time. And the one thing I didn't realize to do is start shorting the stocks as well. So I'm getting ready, keep on putting money aside for this, but same thing. I'm going to short the stocks, and it's just going to be the same thing. So it's high, in the mid 20s, it's going to go down to like 3, 4, $5, something like that. So I'm basically going to 3 to 5x my money on the way down and just do the same thing back up. So if you do 5 down, 5 up, that's a 25x, improvement. So you put in 10,000, like you're getting $250,000 in return. So that's something to look at as well. But yeah, that's where I'm kind of at this point. So trying to think anything else before I head out. Yeah, I think the biggest thing at this point is realizing it's a mentality or a mindset shift of like hoping and praying these people do their jobs to more of just expecting and having that conversation up front that, this is what the vision is. And this is coming from like, it's my own personal thoughts, but I've been reading or going through the Good to Great audiobook, Jim Collins, really good. And it's more or less the same thing. It's finding the right people. In the beginning, you can't really find the people that have had the experience that already are doing the job that you need them to do. But it's more or less being, as the owner of the company, it's more or less trying to be like the visionary. So it's kind of showing them the vision of like what you're looking to do. And then from there, saying, look, this is what I want done. Like, it is your job to make this work. So I'm going to show you how to do it, but you got to own it and take it, make it your own. So instead of getting pissed off that people don't do their jobs, and I think we kind of had to deal with that for the first, or not first, for the last few months or 2 years, something like that, just because unemployment, like no one wants to work and everything else. So you're dealing with a lot of people that like shouldn't probably be working for you, but because you're scared of them not finding someone else, you kind of deal with their bullshit. Which I think now with the recession coming up, it's just going to be different, right? Employers have to be more picky. They can't afford to just be bleeding out money all the time, and there's going to be a lot of people losing their jobs. So it's going to go away from being kind of like an employee market to being an employer market. So we're kind of, so I'm gonna head out, but that's my, what's going on today. So I'll talk.